After analyzing construction schedules and rhythms in the previous video, we now focus on one of the most complex and critical factors to manage on-site. Specialized labor. Here, we can see a detailed overview of the approximate number of people required per phase, technical profile, and power of the photovoltaic plant. The central table breaks down the personnel required for each construction phase, segmented by power range, earth moving, 12 to 45 people depending on scale. Picking and structure, between 25 and 90 people. Module assembly, up to 160 people in plants, 250 MWP.LV/MV cabling, up to 100 people. Substation and HV, 1540 people, one of the most specialized phases. Commissioning, between 8 and 30 people. Overall, a 5100 MWP plant requires between 130 and 180 total jobs. A 250 500 MWP plant requires between 400 and 550 workers during the construction cycle. The simultaneous peak can reach 380 people working in parallel. The graph below compares the number of people at peak construction sites versus the total number of jobs generated according to the size of the project. This is very useful for sizing temporary accommodations, dining rooms, changing rooms, transportation, PPE, and shifts. On the right, the most critical profiles are identified: LVMV electricians, 40% of the necessary staff. High specialization in DC strings, connectors, and combiner boxes. Assemblers, high turnover, rapid training, but variable productivity. QA/QC technicians, only 8% of the staff, but crucial. They require IEC certifications. Site/project managers, critical profiles. Experience on at least 3 projects over 100 MWP is required. Here, we see the real challenges of the labor market. There is a critical shortage of LVMV electricians in Europe. Assembly staff turnover exceeds 34%. Training can be quick, 2-3 weeks, but it isn't always sufficient. LATAM offers greater availability of technicians, but permits, language, travel, and local regulations must be managed. This requires rethinking subcontracting and planning specific training plans from the project design stage. In short, detailed engineering must also include human resources engineering. Knowing how many people, what profiles, when, and with what rotation is just as important as knowing how many modules are installed per day or the price of subcontractors. Now, let's compare all the technical information discussed so far with its real financial impact, analyzing the LCOE, levelized cost of energy, and the payback period. We quote, "We'll see how location, project size, and grid conditions can completely transform a plant's profitability." The graph compares the levelized cost of energy in Euro/MWH in 3 regions of Spain. Southern Spain, the most competitive, with LCOEs of €23 to €28/MWH. Central Spain, intermediate, €25 to €30/MWH. Northern Spain, the most expensive, exceeding €31/MWH even for large plants. In all cases, we observe that increasing capacity consistently reduces the LCOE. €4/6 reduction when going from 50 to 250 MWP. This is due to both economies of scale and the dilution of fixed costs. The table below adds global context with data from Chile and Mexico. Atacama, Chile, the most competitive region in the analysis, with an LCOE of just €19, 5 MWH for large plants. Mexico, also very competitive, between €21.90 and €26, 8/MUEH. This demonstrates how irradiance is the dominant factor when it exceeds 2,100–2,500 kWh M2 year. In contrast, regions in northern Spain or Central Europe with irradiance below 1,600 have a much higher LCOE, even for large PV plants. Here are the 4 main drivers of LCOE: irradiance, plus 10% irradiance, =, 8.5% LCO. Connection costs, 8–15% of capex depending on the distance to the substation or connection point. Economies of scale, 15–18% savings between 50 and 250 MWP. Financial costs, A plus 1% interest rate can increase the LCOE by up to plus 3.2%. Therefore, geographic location and financial structure are just as important as technical design. Payback periods improve significantly with increasing capacity. 5100 MWP, between 6.8 and 7.5 years. Good, 0.100, 250 MWP, between 6.2 and 6.9 years. Very good. 250-500 MWP, between 5.5 and 6.3 years. Excellent. These values make projects over 250 MWP especially attractive for investment funds or merchant structures with partial PPA coverage. The final box provides a key recommendation. In Spain, a location with the lowest connection and grid access costs is often more decisive than a few extra irradiance points. This means that a good electrical location can be more profitable than a location with better sun, but worse access to the connection point. Ultimately, the LCOE depends not only on the sun, but on the entire project design: power, grid access, financial costs, and construction efficiency. Every photovoltaic project, no matter how well designed, must actively assess its technical, financial, and regulatory risks. Now we see a 2025 risk matrix, with its impact, likelihood, and concrete measures to mitigate them. It also introduces how ESG criteria can become a real competitive advantage. The matrix on the left classifies risks into 4 types. High risks, red. Require immediate mitigation. Medium risks, orange. Must be actively controlled. Low risks, green. Can be monitored without critical intervention. Some of the most critical risks are R1. Changes in access, connection to RE. Regulatory changes that invalidate permits or prioritize other projects. High impact. F1. Interest rate increases. 1% increases can increase the LCOE by plus 3.2%. Financial critical. T1. Inadequate geotechnical design. Errors in foundations can impact production and costs. 5% CAPEX. Medium risks are also identified, such as T2. Delays in critical components. Transformers, inverters. F3. Electricity market price volatility. The report proposes a set of actions grouped into 4 blocks: regulatory risks, legal due diligence from the initial phase. Specific contracts, and insurance for permits. Geographic diversification of the portfolio. Creation of a regulatory task force for regulatory monitoring. Financial risks. Long-term PPA contracts, 10-15 years. Swap cap hedging. Green financing with reduced rates. Financial stress scenarios. Technical risks. Pull out geotechnical studies. On site QA/QC of transformers, inverters, and SCADA. Critical risk assessments, plus 5% CAPEX. Integrated strategies. Subcontractors with experience, 100 MWP. Contingency reserves of 7-10% of CAPEX. Advance connection, planning. Technical and financial validation before investment closing. In addition to mitigating risks, the report highlights how ESG, environmental social governance criteria, represent a real opportunity to improve financial costs. Solid ESG projects access interest rates between 0.15% and 0.3% lower. They increase asset valuation by plus 5.8%. The relationship with institutional investors is improved. The key levers by pillar are environmental, E, local biodiversity, modules with a low environmental footprint. Social, S, local training, rural employability, impact on the circular economy. Governance, G, supplier traceability, ethical audits, anti-corruption management. Each code in the matrix is broken down into specific actions. R1, affects grid connection and evacuation points. F1, linked to decisions by the ECB or emerging markets. T1, generates errors in tilting, shading, or even collapses. F3, spot and merchant PPA price volatility. All of these elements must be incorporated into execution plans, EPC contracts, and due diligence. Good risk management not only prevents deviations, but also improves profitability, reduces financial costs, and accelerates bank closure. We reach the key conclusions of the report. Here we summarize the optimal CAPEX per capacity, which strategies maximize profitability, and what the success factors will be for the development of utility-scale plants for the next 24 months. The report classifies CAPEX levels into 3 ranges according to capacity. Plants larger than 250 MWP, 35 cents, 0.40/kWp, optimal. Simplified 1P structure. Standardized transformer substations. O&M savings, €1. 5/kWp/year. Plants between 100-250 MWP, 40 cents, 0.46/kWp. Competitive. Trackers with high ground coverage. Acceptable scale in connection and connection point. Plants between 5100 MWP, 46 cents, 0.52/WP. Standard. They require highly optimized design and OPEX compensation. These values are in line with the lowest values observed in the last 6 months of market activity. 4 strategies stand out as essential. Integrated design, standardized skids and strings. DC cabling reduction, 15 to 20%. Hybrid financial strategy, combination of PPA and merchant. Green financing. Optimal contracting, multi-contracting with specialist per phase, up to plus 5.8% savings compared to a single EPC. Contingency reserve of 7%. Advanced operation with AI-optimized trackers and curtailment. Up to plus 4% in production. The roadmap for new developments is based on 6 strategic axes. Technical modules, 650 WUP, TOPCon. SCADA, integrated from the design stage. Integrated storage, 30-50%. Economic, LCOE, 25-28 euro MWH. Flexible PPAs. Valuable grid services. Temporary, advanced planning, 9-12 months. Early infrastructure deployment. Organizational, multidisciplinary teams. Technical training on site. Digitalization of construction control. ESG and agrivoltaics, ESG, as a financial competitive advantage. Integrated agrivoltaic projects in rural settings. AI and prediction, forecasting with neural networks. Predictive production, OPEX, and risk models. According to BNF and IIA projections, between 2026 and 2027, CAPEX will drop to 30 cents, 0.35/WP in 300 MWP plants. 750 WP modules will become standard. Hybridization with storage, 30-50%, will be the main driver of profitability. These trends will consolidate large-scale plants as the backbone of the global photovoltaic energy mix. With this comprehensive technical and economic vision, it's no longer just about installing modules at the lowest possible price, but rather about designing scalable, fundable, resilient systems that are aligned with future regulations. The key will be to integrate engineering, digitalization, ESG, and strategic foresight into every phase of the project. I hope you enjoyed this series of videos and that the approximate prices and times shown in these videos are helpful in your daily work. Send me a private message on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to receive your constructive feedback for future videos. Thank you very much, and photovoltaic greetings.